Hey, welcome back to part 2 of the 5768 series, the financial evaluation form for parents and grandparents. In this video, we'll cover section 2 of the 5768 form, the employment history of the sponsor and the cosigner if applicable. In the first video, we covered the first section of the form, which was the family size. So if you haven't watched that video, I would highly recommend go watch that first before you move on with this video, because the information that we derived in the first video, we are going to use that in this video. So in this video, we'll cover how to provide employment history for the sponsor and the cosigner if applicable. We'll understand who a cosigner is and what their eligibility requirements are. We'll learn how to document for unemployment periods, how to meet income requirements with the cosigner, and towards the end, we'll cover signatures and how to submit this form using the new online portal. So get your forms ready, let's begin. Okay, so now we'll cover sections 8 through section 17, basically the rest of the form, where we are going to populate this form with the income information based off of the family size that we calculated in section 1 through 7, alright? So, just a few more details before we get started. Number 8, sponsor statement of consent. So, this is where you check yes, list your SIN number, sign it after printing obviously, and date it. What you're doing here is you are authorizing IRCC to collect your tax information from CRA on your behalf, okay? So this is important. If you check no, you will actually have to provide this information yourself using the income sources form 5748. So don't do that, it's just going to increase your labor. Simply select yes, avoid too much manual labor. Let the IRCC do its part, okay? Remember, the information has to be for previous 3 taxation years. Canadian income earned inside of Canada for 3 taxation years, whether it's you or your cosigner, all right? So list your SIN, move along. Now, section 9 is basically you provide the details of all the people in the order that you listed them in section 3.1, 3.2, 3.3 and 3.4, okay? So if you have any people listed here, just provide that information in section 9 in that order, okay? And you do the same thing for section 10 if using a cosigner, all right? So it's in the same order as 4.1, 4.2, 4.3 and 4.4, all right? So this is pretty straightforward. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. So number 11, your spouse or common law partner if they are not co-signing the undertaking. So if they are not co-signing, provide their name here. You are going to provide their name here anyway, okay? So don't think that if you don't provide their name, it's going to be a problem. So only provide the name here if they are not co-signing. If they are co-signing, don't list the name under section 11 of your spouse, all right? Number 12, every other family member not listed above. So this is where you'll provide information about your child and your parents. So this is the information about sponsor's child and sponsor's parents. So for the purpose of this video and to understand the income requirements, we are going to stick with family size of 5. Okay, so you, your wife and your child are in Canada, all Canadian citizens, and the husband is sponsoring his parents. So the family size is 5. Okay, remember we are going to stick with the family size of 5 for the purposes of understanding this section. We are not going to change the family size. This is the assumption. So the family size is 5, all right? So to find out how much you need to show as proof of income for a family size of 5, you come back to this page, guide 5772, you scroll down, click on before you apply information for the sponsor, scroll down until you get to this chart, all right? And this is where you will see the row 5 people and the requirements of income for 5 people for 2020, 2019 and 2018, all right? So the assumption is that you have been married and with a child, all 3 citizens since 2018, and now in 2021, you are sponsoring your parents, all right? That is the assumption. So you will have to show 54,630 for 2020 gross income, 69,423 for 2019 and 68,358 for 2018. All of this Canadian income earned inside of Canada, all right? Not foreign income, Canadian income. And this is the scenario that we are going to stick with. We are not going to cover a scenario where the family size changes from, let's say, 4 people to 5 people or 3 people to 4 people from 2018 to 19 to 20. I explain all that in detail in my income requirements and family size video, so I'm not going to cover that here. So if you are confused about how much income to show if your family size changes in the 3 years before applying for sponsorship of your parents, then go check out that video. It will explain and answer all your concerns. Alright, but for the purpose of this video, we will stick with a family size of 5 that has been a family size of 5 since 2018, okay? So that we can explore other scenarios without worrying about the family size changing. So let's come back to the form now that we know that this is the amount that we need to show as gross income. Let's come back to the form and actually start putting details. So you will check here employed. This is the assumption you were employed. And the easiest scenario is, let's assume from 2018 January 1st through present you have been employed. And by you, I mean the sponsor. We are right now covering the sponsor. And in this scenario, there is no co-signing, nothing. So your wife is not assisting you with the application. We are going to look at it next. All right. So the sponsor, the husband in this case, is solely sponsoring his parents, and he is individually solely providing for the entire family of 5 people. All right. So we just saw the income requirements for 5 people. So let's assume that you, the husband, have been working and have been constantly working for the same company since 2018 January 1st. That's the easiest situation. So we list 2018 January 1st through present. And by the way, the information they ask is of a taxation year. So taxation year is simply January through December. All right. So you have been working, the husband has been working from 1st January 2018 through present. So this covers all the tax years before sponsoring your parents, which means you have been employed for 2020, 2019, 2018. So there is one criteria met. All right. Now let's assume that your income for all those 3 years was 70K, which means 70,000 Canadian dollars. All right. So what you will list here under gross income is the total money you made in all that period from 2018 to present. All right. So let's assume you made 70,000 in 2018, 19 and 20. So the total income becomes 210K. And the way you find that income is by simply getting your T4 slip and adding all the gross income from that T4 slip. Always use the T4 slip to add your income. Don't just add the income off the top of your head. It has to match what is in the T4 slip. All right. So 70,000 for 2018, 70,000 for 2019 and 70,000 for 2020, 210. And let's say from January through October of 2021, you made 50,000. So the total amount that you made is 210 plus 50 is 260,000 Canadian dollars. Okay. So you will list that here, 260 Canadian dollars for a family size of 5. All right. And this is where you'll provide your phone number. And this is where you list your Canadian address. Remember the complete address with street name, zip code, city, country, okay? And this is where you will list the name of your employer. So let's say XYZ company. All right. So if you can provide that and you provided your SIN number up top, remember, this is where you provided your SIN number. What IRCC is going to do is that it's going to pull your tax information from CRA using your SIN number, and it's going to verify that the income that you listed here is actually a true match with your 3 years of individual income for 2020, 2019 and 2018, okay, or whatever 3 years preceding when you are applying for sponsorship. All right. And then if they see that it's a match, the income criteria are met, then they will simply approve your application. So that is a very easy scenario that we just covered. And this is the most desirable and the optimal scenario you want. All right. But this is not always the case. And that's why we are going to complicate things further and look at the next scenario. Okay, so now let's look at the second scenario. The family size is still the same for 2018, 19 and 20. Nothing has changed. which means that on this page, you still qualify under the 5 people category. Okay, but there is a variable changed. So let's look into it. Let's assume this time you were not consistently employed from 2018 through 2021 with the same employer. All right, let's assume you changed employers and your income also changed. So how to account for that? So let's assume that from 2020 January through 2021, at this point present, you were working for an employer where you were making $75,000 per year. All right, so 2020 January through present. All right, and let's say this employer is XYZ, and this is where you list the Canadian address, phone number, family size remains 5, and then let's assume that you made $75,000 per year with this employer. So for the taxation year of 2020, you will have already made 75K and you will have filed that tax with the CRA, right? But because it's 2021 right now, and if you're doing the application of sponsorship, you have not really filed taxes yet. You will do that in 2022. So whatever income you have up until 2021, from January to October, you are going to add that. And in your application, when you submit that, you're simply going to attach your pay slips with the application so that IRCC knows that this person has actually earned this much money. All right, because you're not going to have taxation information for 2021 yet. All right, so let's assume you made 75K Canadian in 2020, and so far from January through October 2021, you've made 55K. All right, so your total gross income from 2020 January through present becomes 130K or 130,000 Canadian dollars. All right, so you list that here. Then let's assume that in 2019, you worked for a different employer and you made a different amount of money. All right, so let's assume you worked for the entire year from January through December 12/31, and let's say you worked for Canadian Tire. Okay, this is where you will list the Canadian address, your phone number. Okay, and let's say you made 73K, all right, or 73,000 Canadian dollars. So 73, and the family size was still 5, all right. So let's quickly go back to the IRCC income chart and see if you qualify. So for 5 people for 2019, you need to show 69,423. So you barely met the criteria, but you met the criteria, all right. So you're good. Now, let's say that for 2018, you were unemployed for half of the year. Okay, so for the first half, you were unemployed and you had a job in the second half. So how to account for that? So it clearly states here that you do not leave any gaps in time. Account for periods of unemployment. So you will have to list unemployed period here also. So let's say from 2018 July 1st through 2018 December 31st, the second half of the year, you were working for ABC company and you're going to list your Canadian address here also. So let's call it Canadian address 3, let's call this 2, and let's call this 1. List your number. So let's assume you made $30,000 from July 1st through December 31, 2018. Okay, so you're going to list that here. And family size was still 5. All right, so let's check the requirements again. So if you check the 5 people requirement for 2018, the requirement is at least 68,358 Canadian or more. Clearly, we are way short. All right, so this is not going to work and this is going to render you ineligible to sponsor. All right, so that is how these requirements work. You may be eligible for 2 years, but you are not eligible for the 3rd year. So then it completely terminates your eligibility. So in order to be eligible to sponsor, you have to be eligible for all 3 years, which means you have to meet the income criteria for all 3 years. All right. So what is the solution to that? This is where we get into Cosigner. All right. So let's look at that next. So before we get into Cosigner income, let's understand who a cosigner is and who can be a cosigner for you. All right, so you'll get to this page. It's a help center page of the Government of Canada CIC website. I'm going to link it in the description below. So it says here, who can be my cosigner on my application to sponsor my parents and grandparents. All right, so if you scroll down, there are very strict regulations here. It says, regardless of how long you've been married or in a common law, in this case, in our scenario, it's a married case, your spouse, which means in this case, your wife, can be your cosigner. All right, so that criteria is already met. The second criteria is your cosigner, which means in this case, your wife, must provide proof of income for at least 3 last taxation years before the date of application. All right, so this is where it gets complicated. So be very careful in understanding this. It clearly says that your cosigner, which means your wife, will also have to provide information for 2020, 2019 and 2018 if they are assisting you with the application. What does that mean? It means that your cosigner should also have filed taxes for 2020, 2019 and 2018. Which means they will have T4 slips for 2020, 2019, 2018. All right, that is when they will qualify. So when will they not qualify? Let's say you are a citizen, you are a family of 5, you, wife, child, parents in India being sponsored, but wife recently became a permanent resident. Let's say she became a permanent resident in 2019 and she started making money after that, but she still only has income for 2020 and 2019. All right, so she does not qualify because she has to have income for 2018 also. That is exactly what it states here. It doesn't say that your wife, who's a cosigner, should also make the same amount of money that is listed in this chart. Okay, because that will defeat the purpose. You're using a cosigner because you individually could not make that money in 2018. As we saw in the form here, you made only $30,000. So for 2018, you wanted to use a cosigner. So the total amount of money you needed was 68,358 or more Canadian dollars. But your wife didn't have any income in 2018 because she became a permanent resident and started working in 2019. Then you cannot use a cosigner. That's why I wanted to point your attention to this scenario. If you're using a cosigner, then she, in this case your wife, has to have proof of income for 2018, 2019, 2020. Doesn't matter how much money she has made. Doesn't matter if she was employed for the entire year. As long as she has filed taxes with the CRA, her T4 slip can be obtained by IRCC using the SIN number that she will provide. And if the 2018 income that your wife has, once added to your income of $30,000, let's say your wife made $50,000 in 2018, okay, and you only made $30,000. But when you combine, your income becomes $80,000. So then you will meet the criteria for 2018 as a combined unit, and individually you will meet the criteria 2020 and 2019 as we saw here. All right, and then your application to sponsor will be approved because now you become eligible as far as the income criteria is concerned. The requirement for the cosigner is 3 taxation years, just like the sponsor. All right, so there is no difference in that. The only difference is there is no income requirement for the cosigner as long as the combined income exceeds the income that is required in this chart. All right, let's say you as the sponsor is not even making any money. All right, you have been unemployed. Then your cosigner will have to have exactly this or more income, because then they are the sole provider for the family and they're also co-signing the application. So this will apply to them then. So a good example would be, let's assume me, my wife and my child are Canadian citizens who live here, and my wife wants to sponsor her parents. Okay, but my wife has no income here. So I am the co-signer. My wife is the sponsor, but I am the co-signer. But my wife doesn't earn. In that case, I will have to show 54,630 or more for 2020, 69,423 or more for 2019, and 68,358 or more for 2018 as a co-signer, because my wife had no income for 2018, 19 and 20. So that is how the cosigner and sponsor relationship works. Okay, so let's get back to the form. So before we move forward with the cosigner section, we have to account for the unemployed period for the first half of 2018. Remember, you have to document periods of unemployment for the 3 taxation years. So we haven't really accounted for unemployment period in 2018. So let's assume from January 2018 through June 2018, you were unemployed, the sponsor. All right. So let's list that here. So 2018, 1st January through 2018, 30th June. You can write NA because you were unemployed, or you can actually write unemployed and just put NA here. You don't have to list a phone number, and $0 you made during the first half of 2018 for a family of 5. All right. So now the employment section for the sponsor is complete. All right. Let's assume the sponsor was unemployed for the second half of the year and employed for the first half. So these 2 rows are simply going to be changed. All right. So this is going to go here and this is going to come here. But you have to provide your exact history for all 3 taxation years, even accounting for periods of unemployment. All right. And once you have the information about your cosigner, your wife in this situation, you will list the SIN number here. You will print this out. Your wife will sign here. This is the wife's SIN number, by the way. Okay, not the sponsor's SIN number. The sponsor's information is already filled out here. All right. So SIN, sign and date, wife's information. So then you list the cosigner employment information here, just the way we saw for the sponsor, from the most recent to the oldest. And then you will have completed this form. Make sure to print out this form and sign and date it by hand. And then you will have to scan it and upload to the online portal, which we are going to look at next. But do not send this form without signatures. Okay, there is no validation, no barcodes for this form, but you have to fill it out in its entirety and you will have to sign it and date it. Okay, so let's look at how to upload this. And this is when you log into your permanent resident portal and then scroll down all the way until you see the forms that you have to upload. Okay, this is inside your application. If you don't know this portal, if you don't know how it works, then I've made an entire video on how to apply online using the new online portal. So it should be showing up here on the cards here and also linked in the description below. Go check it out. So if you keep scrolling down until you get to 5768, that's where it is. There is also a download option here. So you can actually download the latest form from right here, fill it out, and then you click on upload. And then just upload the form that we just completed, and this section will then be complete. All right. Also, I want to mention, if you have applied or are going to apply for your parents online, then there will be some forms that you will have to sign and upload. Okay. So I've made an entire video explaining how to sign IRCC forms, which ones to sign, which ones not to sign, and then how to upload them. Okay, so it should be showing up here on the cards here. It's linked in the description below. Although the video that I made was in the context of a spousal sponsorship, the signature portion for forms such as 1344 and 5476 will still apply. Okay, so if you're confused about signing, definitely go check this video out. All right, that was form 5768. I know this form is a nightmare, but we covered a lot of ground. Just understand the logic and you will be able to apply those concepts to your situation. This is Suyash from Hit Submit and Canada. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay employed, keep making that sweet, sweet Canadian dollar so that when your parents get here, you can treat them right. Good night.